Now that those two groups are dealt with, there's really not that much left apart from the enemy castle, and since it's a long way from here to Thove, I warn you that this part is pretty much all just walking around trying to get there. Mightn't be too eventful. We will be visiting several villages and promoting Midale, as he reached level 20 in the last part. And I guess I'll basically take this time to talk about whatever random trivia topics come into my head. Yeah, see, now you're going to have to cross this area, and of course, there's not much enemies until up the north end. You do have to watch out, though, because some of them have Blizzard. Yes, I will go into more detail when we actually encounter them, but Blizzard is very annoying. It's basically a long-range wind spell. But thankfully, it doesn't put you to sleep like it does in Fire Emblem 5. Seriously, I don't know why the developers would put that kind of feature into a game other than to seriously annoy anyone playing. Interesting, that's actually another feature of the Ichival. It actually heals the user at the beginning of every turn, just like the life ring does. Actually, what both those items are essentially doing is they are giving the user the life skill. Now, if you haven't heard about the life skill in this game, I don't blame you. No character on your side ever has it, and even among enemies, it's incredibly rare. I mean, I think there's one generic enemy in the last chapter who has it. Other than that, I can't really think of anyone. Basically, though, you will really, in this game, only encounter the life skill through items such as the life ring and the Ichival. And there is one other weapon that gives it to you too, but I don't want to mention that because it's kind of a spoiler. We will be encountering it in a chapter's time. Anyway, just get out of these woods. Hopefully see a few village conversations to make things a bit more interesting. Claude almost has enough money for the recover staff, which I want him to buy. And this basically explaining the Holy Blood system, which I did in my prologue commentary. That abilities as a knight line is a bit of a ambiguous translation. I'm pretty sure it's referring to just stats. Essentially what it means is that characters who have Holy Blood will generally have higher growth rates than average. Which especially comes into play in the second generation, seeing that most second generation characters will have at least one type of Holy Blood and very often a combination of types. Now this village, this is very, very, well, odd. Yes, villages that teach you about incest. I would like to point out, though, that just because two characters have the same Holy Blood type doesn't necessarily mean they're immediate family members. I think a good example to use here is Oife. Oife actually has Baldo blood, but he's never really directly implied to be a blood relative of Sigurd. Ira and Holland is a similar situation. Well, I can't quite say where Holland gets his Odo blood from at the moment, because, again, that's a spoiler. But essentially, it basically boils down to they're both from Isaac, rather than any kind of direct relation to each other. And Midale just promoted, but really, there's nothing much special about the Bow Knight class, other than it just giving you a slight all-round stat boost. And increasing your movement by 1. Other than that, really, nothing much. It's just a stronger version of his regular class, and unlike just about every kind of mounted archer in the rest of the series, it doesn't give him a physical weapon. Still stuck with bows. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing when you can hit and run like you can in this game. Anyway, back to what I was saying before, there is another character who appears in Fire Emblem 5, Galzus, who is heavily implied to have Odo blood too, but of course he has no immediate connection to Holland or Ira. Do I sense foreshadowing there? Yes, and by the way, the conversation that explains that Alvis was marrying Deirdre glitched up in the translation, and you can find it in the description of the first part of this chapter in my playthrough. Oh, come on. Seriously, he can do better than that. Much better. Yeah, some people may confuse Haim and Naga. Basically, Naga is the god that gives the Granbell royal family its power. Haim was the crusader who received that god's power. So, the descendants of Haim are the ones with Naga blood in this game. And this guy here is explaining about the various countries in this game that specialize in magic. Of course, we actually have members of all three in our party for this game. Of course, Azel being of Velthroma descent, Telchu for Frege, and of course Levin for Silesia. Although Levin's connection to his respective god is a lot stronger than Azel and Telchu's is. Also, yeah, it's only mentioned in the intro at the moment, but Frege and Velthroma are both in Granbell. Frege doesn't really come into the story until later. In the second generation, there's a pretty significant subplot involving that country. At the moment, its only real presence is Reptor, possibly the major antagonist at this point. No, they're not quite paired yet. But they will be surprisingly soon, actually. Now, hopefully in the next part, we'll actually see some action again. Now, that village, the one that's completely intact, I am sure, no, I am positive that is the one Sylvia needs to visit. Yes, the infamous glitched up event. I really have no idea why it does that. Now we need to position our characters so as to lure these enemies here away from their post. Yeah, a mage and 2 sword fighters. Anyway, hopefully next part's going to be a lot more eventful than this was.